Nice. All right. Well, we're back in sunny San Diego, and today we're going to be going over my 100 mile, my first ultra race at Mount Hood. So it was a HoodHundred. We're going to go over the race, the portions that I ran of the race, and then ultimately how I came to DNF on my first race. But first and foremost, Mount Hood is an absolutely special place. I kept saying it. I think God or the universe spent a little extra time on creating that mountain. So, um, first and foremost, just got to say that, I guess, like praise and thanks to the energy of that mountain, not to sound too hippie. And then also, thank you to the locals. Anyone who volunteered, you guys made the race so amazing. The organizers, and then most importantly to me, Josie and my mom. My mom flew all the way out from New York to come on out, and they weren't planning on sleeping. They were nonstop. Everyone in the entire aid stations were raving about how amazing they were, and they truly were. So every single aid station that I was approaching, I was just super excited to. Now, in terms of sleep, that was one of my biggest concerns with the day prior to the race. The week leading up, I had a lot of excitement, and it would take me almost 2 to 3 hours to fall asleep. Usually, I fall asleep within 10 minutes of hitting the bed. But with this much excitement, going over my splits, just overall excitement, I was just really nervous I wasn't going to be able to sleep. I was super grateful. I got 7.5 hours worth of sleep. Woke up non groggy, just felt super energetic, super amazing, and started eating blueberry muffins just to start to get more carbs and calories. Um, my mom, Josie, they woke up super amped. They were already starting to ring the cowbells, and we were off to the race. We were off to a really good start. Once we got to um, Mount Hood and walking in the parking lot, like I said, coming from San Diego and New York in the summertime, end of July, it was absolutely freezing. I think in the morning it was 52 degrees, and we were going to climb higher in elevation. So that's something that I was prepared for, but it was something foreign to me. All of my training pretty much was Southern California and New York. So high humidity, high heat, or no humidity, extremely high heat. I ran out in Joshua Tree weeks before, and I think it was 107 degrees. So a little bit of a change, but super enjoyable. I actually run better in the cold than the extreme heat, so that ended up working out super well. So at the start, very first time ever starting, it was one of the most electric feelings ever. Um, Almost had a tear in my eye of just how exciting it was. You just felt the energy, and I was watching a clock tick down, and I had to put my ear pods in just to listen to music because I didn't want to get overwhelmed with too much excitement and come out too hot. That was my number one goal, was to run my race and run a smart race. I knew what pace I wanted to set, and my concern was when you first get out the gate, I was going to get with a pack of elite runners and pretty much blow out on the first 15 to 25 miles. So I put my headphones on. We got down to zero. We took off, and it was one of the most exciting feelings ever. It was just absolutely amazing. Within the first mile or two, I realized that I was in a mountain ultra. It was just completely uphill. I think the first 4 to 5 miles was nothing but uphill. Um, and what I did was I was in the top, I would say, 50 people. And at one point, I strategically dropped back to like the top 75, 100 just to find my pace and not be pushed too hard out within the first 5 miles. Funny enough, when we got to the very top peak of the first section, like I said, I always grew at sea elevation, or at sea level, or 2 feet below sea level. I thought we already were up like 35 to 5,500 feet worth of elevation gain. I was like, this can't get any higher than this. Later in the race, I ended up meeting up with this guy, Ben. We ended up power walking this hill for a while and we got chatting. And he's from Oregon. I asked him, I was like, hey, what was the elevation gain on that first climb? And he was like 800 to 1,200 feet. So just to illustrate how out of place I truly was. Um, but yeah, I guess the first gain to the first peak was I felt strong, I felt healthy, I ran my pace, I ran my race, felt like I was running smart, and I knew eventually we were going to have to go downhill, and that's where I excel, is on the downhill. When we got to the top, what's up, babes? When we got to the very top, it was just like something I've never seen, and I got super super lucky. The photographer James, I'll put his link in the, the bio of this video. He captured an amazing photo of me. I just feel super lucky. The sun was rising, the clouds were below us, and it really illustrated how high up we were. Um, when we hit the peak, we were actually at snow level on the mountain. We were way above the clouds, and then the downhill started, and that's where my race really began. Um, I really excel on the downhills, and I took advantage of that. So I think I was somewhere at the top of the highest peak for the first section. I was somewhere in the top, like, I would say 100 people or so. I was within 10, give or take, runners of place 100. On the downhill, I've never felt a hill like that before in my entire life. I realized that if I tripped, I was not going to stop rolling. It was steep. But with that, I was able to go from place probably 100 to somewhere around 50. I passed somewhere around 45 to 55 people. Um, and it just brought a lot of energy and excitement for me. Finishing out that section felt super super strong. I caught up and started pacing with two girls. We were pacing somewhere around a 9:45, 10:15 pace. We started getting out of like the mountain, and back into the forest. And one of the girls right behind me saying that she ran the 50 miler at Mount Hood the year before, and I was listening to some of her conversation with another girl and trying to pick up some tips and tidbits of the mountain. Got super excited because I looked down at my watch. I thought I had another mile and a half before we hit the rest station. So I was just kind of getting into a zone. And one of the coolest things of ultra racing is when the forest is just that thick, you can't hear too far in advance, but out of nowhere, the cowbells and all the people cheering and everything just popped up out of nowhere. So that aid station came almost a mile and a half before I anticipated. Got to that that aid station, and it was just super exciting to see Josie and my mom. Just wanted to share everything that happened on the first section, and smashed a blueberry muffin. Was feeling super super good.
There's another one.
Been here for 6 minutes now.
Love you. Honey, honey, honey.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
So Red's bin.
Yeah.
I have barbecue.
Yep. We have everything. We got everything.
Mom caught a cool little video of me being who I am, and yeah, I was off. So that first aid station was Umbrella Aid Station. So after leaving Umbrella Aid Station, we went right back into the forest. Past a waterfall, which was super beautiful. And once again, I got to pace with this gentleman from Washington State. Um, we were pacing about a 10:15. It was full, it was relatively flat. It would dip up. So I mean, it was relatively not much gain, not much loss. Um, that was a really quick section. 10 miles in, doing well. Really good to see Josie, my mom, at the rest station. So really, really good. So we're doing it. Past another beautiful waterfall, we hit some of the pavement, and then we got into our second station. Um, and it was cool. During that one loop, I got to talk with two of the guys that we were pacing. Like I said, we were running like a 9:45 to 10:45. We just kind of kept going back and forth. And I was asking them what their intention was in terms of time. They were all looking for around 24 to 26 hours. So I knew these are the type of, this was the group that I was going to try to pace with the entire time. That was my goal, was to be within just under 24 or just above 26 hours for my first race. So after that section, had a nice little downhill, came into the parking lot, saw my mom and Josie. My mom was an absolute legend, always made sure the car was parked right in front of everyone. And this is where I think everyone started getting a little concerned, including myself, of chasing a calorie deficit. I ended up putting some layers back on. I took some layers off after the first section. Second section ran, which was a t-shirt. Third section, I said, hey, we're going to go back up in elevation. I want a long sleeve shirt. But Josie was really on top of me, making sure that I started my electrolytes and then also eating more and packing a ton. One of her tricks was, or is dates with Parmesan cheese and honey. And those are just light, but absolutely packed with calories. So she packed me up with like 14 of those, 15 of those. And I was off. The one thing I wish I changed was that I took my trekking poles on that section. That entire section, I want to say, was, let's say, like 4.5 miles of just straight uphill, like just absolutely straight uphill. I was not prepared for that. So there was a ton of power walking. Got to the next aid station, which was Bennett Pass. There was no crew allowed there. It was just water station. Filled up with water, and then after that, I believe they had like another 7.5 miles to go. Ran out of water on that 7.5 miles. Most of it was uphill. Thank God the last probably 2 miles was downhill, and I gained up so much time. But when we hit the peak, it was one of the most beautiful views ever, and that's when I started to see people, they started to get in trouble. In one of my videos, I actually had a guy say that he wasn't feeling well. I stayed with him for probably about a half a minute to 2 minutes. I gave him some of my dates. He recharged. But you can tell people were starting to hurt. And this is probably somewhere around mile 15 to 22 or so. So I hit the downhill, and this is where I started hitting my first problem, and I didn't even realize it. So got to the Robin of the Hood station. Like I said, the last 2.5 miles was downhill, so I took advantage of it. I caught up with 3 people that absolutely passed me on the uphill. And this is where I realized that you need to run your game in this race. Some people will be strong on the uphill, some people will be strong on the downhill. Just focus on yourself. And the whole race was almost like leapfrog. Some people would pass you, then you would catch up and pass them, and so on. So I ended up catching up with 2 other people. So there was 3 of us. We took the downhill 2.5 miles. We got out of the forest. It took my eyes almost like 2 minutes to adjust. Like I said, never really been to the PNW to the Northwest. That forest gets dark once you're in there. But it was just super cool. So we came out, super energetic. Everyone was ringing the cowbells. Found my mom and Josie, and that's when we were first concerned with my calorie deficit and hydration. I just had no saliva, couldn't take down food, I could keep it in. So Thank God Josie had some watermelon. That got me going a little bit, and then I had almost 2 sandwiches. Now the issue with that was I caught back up with my calories, but I was just so full and almost drank a half a gallon of water at that aid station that leading into the next run, the first 2 miles, I had to walk, run, and mostly walk just because I was so full. So lesson learned, like I said, days leading into it, I need to hit the calories way harder because, like I said, somewhere around mile 15 to 22, it ultimately caught up with me and then hurt my pace essentially, my rhythm. So after that, got into that section, walked about the first 2.5, mostly walked, but threw some running in there. And once again, run your race. I had probably 25 to 40 people pass me. Later in that section, I would eventually catch up with them. It's just after eating so much, it really slowed me down for about 2.5 miles. That section in itself, too, gave me my one and only blister I had throughout the entire race for me. We ran part of the course there was a dried up riverbed, and it was mostly big rocks, but mostly just sand. The sand kicked up, got into my shoes. I don't wear socks, and just rubbed out. So one of the lessons I learned from this, and I noticed a lot of the other people, including pacers, they were wearing gaiters. So moving forward, I'm going to start running with gaiters to avoid those blisters. I just don't run well with socks. So that was one of the first lessons I got from the race itself, but specifically from that section. Once the 2.5 miles passed and I digested my food, that one section was just gorgeous. We were running along a river. It was dark inside the forest, and you would pop out, get some sunshine. Then you would have the river, and it was just, you felt like you were in the PNW. You felt like you were in the Northwest. It was just absolutely amazing. There was a lot of downhill, but a lot of uphill, so I was able to catch up a little bit of speed. Ultimately, I did catch up to those 25 people that passed me, and I ended up passing them. And this is where the bottleneck started, the first and only bottleneck of the race. This race is on public ground, so the trails are open to the public. One of the sections where we're leading into the waterfall, I probably gained about an hour, unfortunately, on my time just because of the amount of sheer crowd walking a single lane trail to get to the waterfall. It was horrendous, to say the least. And I was trying to be respectful because they're paying there. It's public land. It's their land along with mine. So I was trying to be as respectful as possible, but it added a lot of time to that section in itself. But the water was beautiful. It was absolutely gorgeous. Once I got out of the waterfall, had a little bit more of an uphill, maybe a mile and a half, and then the downhill began. Now, this downhill was going into Pololease aid station, I believe. Um, and this was going to be non-crew, so I wasn't going to be able to see Josie and my mom, but it was a full aid station from the organization. That downhill, I ended up starting to pace a 7:05 to 7:45. I was making up some serious time. I once again started passing more people. I felt a good rhythm. I was running my own race. And sure enough, I ate absolute shit twice. The first time, my right leg caught a root, completely skid, not one scratch, not one cut, but I felt almost a hyperextension on my right hamstring. Got up immediately, kept running, got back down to like a 7:45, 7:35 pace. Within, I would assume, like the next mile, I did it again, and I felt it tighten up a little bit. Didn't pay much mind to it. Came out of that section, got to the aid station, and just kind of put it aside. That thought, didn't think anything of it. At this point, I was probably somewhere around mile 26 to 30. They had an awesome lady there who had a sponge with ice water. She was cooling us all down. My mom, thank God, the aid station before gave me a bandana, so I was keeping my neck nice and cold. And limiting the sun exposure. Grabbed a ton of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, just trying to keep up with my calories. First time in the race, I drank a little bit of soda, loaded up on water, and I looked at this older lady who was keeping up with me, 62 years old, and she was running my pace. And I looked at her and said, I'm going to make up time on this section. She said, absolutely not. This is where we entered, arguably, where it started taking souls, this mountain. And this was zigzag trailhead. Ran a little bit on the highway. I got a nice photo of myself to send to my mom and Josie. Never ended up doing it because of service. Was feeling super, super good. And then this is where the race really started to hit. Zigzag. I looked at my watch from when I started, and when we zigzagged up this hill, it was 1.8 miles straight uphill. Absolutely straight uphill. I was, I think, averaging somewhere around a 17 to 19-minute pace. On the downhill prior to that, I was averaging somewhere and pacing around a 7:05 to 7:45. That was brutal. Going up there, you saw people actually starting to contemplate the DNF. People were starting to chafe. People were stopping. People were throwing up. It was a very, 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 very difficult section. And then even looking back at that section through my footage, it is the only section of the race I have zero content, zero videos, zero photos. It was just put your head down and just keep going. One of the gentlemen behind me, he had like a heavy cough just to clear his throat once in a while. As we were going up the zigzag, you heard his cough getting further and further and further away. It was probably the most memorable in terms of difficult parts of the race. It's the most memorable section for sure. Once that mile, 1.8 to 2 miles of that uphill section was completed, it was almost like a good mile and a half or so downhill. And once again, I just took advantage of it. On the downhill, I was starting to pace like a 7:05, 7:45, just hauling as much ass as I possibly could. The next aid station that I got into was the longest aid station or the longest stop of any aid station for me. It was surveyors. It was super energetic, and as soon as I got in, you could tell that's when people were starting to DNF. Josie was saying she heard the stories of how brutal it was and the horror stories. I saw 4 or 5 people on the side just DNFing. When I got into the station prior, I forgot to mention that there was a girl with a sling right after the waterfall on that downhill section that I fell twice. She was in a sling. I think she messed up her wrist or broke her wrist. I hope she's feeling better. Speedy recovery. But this is the part of the race where people started DNFing. And we were somewhere around mile 42, if I'm not mistaken, 38, 42-ish. I think that's where we were. But I spent probably about 20 minutes there, and Josie kept having to hustle me along because all I wanted to do was talk story and show them photos and videos, and I was just super, super excited to be there. They went out, they got me some pizza, had some margarita pizza, had Pedialyte grape. Thank you, Josie, I love you. Spent about 20 minutes there, and that's when my first blister I had to clean up. I spent a couple minutes cleaning it up, bandaging it up, taping it up, and then I was off. It was the longest, and that 20 minutes honestly felt like an hour. But leaving that section, I was super energetic, but I was also aware of the race that I was running because you started to see people DNF and people really, really, really hurting. So after leaving surveyors and on that next loop in that next section, I almost got lost because this race is a lollipop. So as you're coming out, people are going to be coming back in. So, and there was just some, because there was signs going that way and coming this way as well. So a lady and I were running, and we both looked at each other like, hey, I think we're going the wrong direction. Thank God she had her maps on, and we realized we were doing just the right race. This section is where I started to feel the solitude of an ultra run. I didn't see anyone for probably about 7.5 miles, mostly uphill, of course. Just ran my own race. It was absolutely gorgeous. The temperature was starting to drop, so it was really, really refreshing. And I would say I probably spent a good 2 hours all by myself. No one behind me, not many people in front of me. And this is where I actually got super, super lucky too. The photographer, he ended up capturing 3 really, really, really good photos of me. Um, and I ended up telling him he made my day. One of these photos I know for certain I'm actually going to print and frame and put on my wall. I'm just super grateful that I was able to capture, he was able to capture that moment of me. It was just a super special time. Um, and it was really peaceful too, because like I said, I didn't see anyone for nearly 2 hours. And so I just remember that section being super peaceful, wholesome, and to be able to capture the photo that he did, I think it he captured that moment perfectly for me. So I'm super, super grateful for that. So after that photo, it was mostly downhill, took advantage of it. Terrain wasn't difficult at all, a couple of rocks here or there. Mostly heavy dust, like silt almost. Um, but after that, it came into mile, what was it? After that came into 15-mile aid station, and you could tell it was starting to get a little darker. Um, Energy was super high. I felt so good. My mom was just like, gave me like such a great little mother pep talk. I felt on fire, like absolutely on fire. And that aid station, I think I was there for 5 minutes at most. Just geared up. I had to lotion up. I had to put some lotion recovery stuff on my legs just because they were starting to tighten up a little bit, but they felt so good. And grabbed a quick sandwich, had some more pizza, and I was full. And I remember leaving and telling my mom, "Hey, this one section, I'm probably going to walk the first mile because I just ate so much." Left that section, and it was almost all downhill from the beginning. So I just started utilizing it, and it turned into probably 85% of that section was all uphill. Little did I know this was my last section that I was going to run. So for the first 4 miles, it was downhill. I was pacing a 7:05 flat. I ended up passing someone, I would say half a mile into this section. And I remember saying, "Oh, I love these downhills." And he goes, "This whole section is downhill." I just did not lose momentum. So I want to say I entered this section somewhere around mile 46, 45. Had a good 4.5 miles of downhill, and I passed the 50-mile mark. And I was just so stoked. And at that moment, I realized, like, I'm going to finish this race. I'm going to finish the time I want. I was already calculating the rest stops and kind of digesting and breaking down all of the next sections and how to mentally process this and not look too far out in advance. I just felt it. I had it. I was just so strong. No pain, felt loose. And I remember even Josie saying, "You look great. Like, you have this. Like, you look really, really good, really comfortable, high spirits. You're happy." And I just felt the best. Somewhere around mile 50 and a half, once again, for the third time, I ate absolute shit and got knocked out. This last part of the downhill section became super, super rocky. I didn't see one rock. Once again, I hit my right foot. I went, I guess I hit a rock or a root. I'm not really sure. But I went to go fly. It caught me, and I just went straight down. Hit my head, saw stars, sucked in some of the dust, and I felt my knee go. I had zero issue with my knee, but I felt something. Just so much work and wear and tear on the body in one day that just you're gonna feel something. But when I was kneeling and I got back up, that's when I felt my hamstring go, and that's ultimately what led to my DNF. I think so many those 3 falls that day, they I got stuck and it kept pulling my right leg, and so I think I hyperextended my right hamstring that day. Now, what I've been questioning to myself is, and something that I need to do moving forward is I need to work on my hamstrings and my glutes and my back, especially for these mountain races. I'm super, super, super curious. Had I had stronger hamstrings for this race, would that hyperextended? And I don't know. I really don't know. But it encourages me to spend more time focusing on the strength of the back portion of my legs. Um, so got up, felt it immediately, started running for about another half a mile, hit mile 51, and that was it. I just knew it. I was like, I got to walk the rest. Add insult to injury, mile 50 to 51 to 55 was completely uphill. So I went from pacing on the downhill 7:05 for that section, including the rest areas, getting choked up at the waterfall for about an hour earlier that day. I was pacing somewhere around like a 16:20, 16:15, something like that, like a mid 16s. Those last 4 miles, I was pacing about a 30-minute walk. That's how bad I was. And I felt bad for Josie, my mom. They knew something was up. I think somebody else came in ahead of me that I was originally ahead of, I believe, and they came in injured. So they knew something happened to me. Um, I wasn't upset, and I felt super pleased with the race. I was super, super excited. I actually took a moment and took one last photo of the sunset of the mountain and just the landscape. I was super at peace and super happy. But when I didn't come in, my mom and Josie got super, super nervous. So my mom and Josie both had pacer tags just in case. My mom ended up putting a pacer tag on and came out to find me. She found me about a half a mile from the aid station, and I knew it was my mom. I saw her Skechers sneakers, and they were lighting up the reflectors on it. And I called hello, and she called Gerard, and my mom came in to the ultra race to help me out on my last half a mile in. So, which is funny. And honestly, when I got to the aid station, I told people, I was like, felt like that moment when your mom hops on the school bus in the morning and flags down the bus just to give you your lunch that you forgot. It's just kind of funny. I love my mom. It was just very funny. I'm very grateful for it. But got to the aid station, and I think there was like another 4 or 5 people that had injuries that DNF'd. This is where you were starting to see the injury portion of the DNFs of the race. And yeah, I sat there for maybe about a half an hour, tried to see if I can get up, and I could not move my leg. It was just done for. So I had a DNF just because of pure injury. Um, my thoughts are, if that never happened, I would have finished the race really, really good time in the time that I wanted. Um, yeah, and I had a DNF. So I thought I would have been upset if I had a DNF, and I wasn't. I felt proud, happy, and just overall satisfied. Um, it was very, very challenging, of a lot of lessons to be learned, and I want to do it again. So it was an interesting quote unquote failure. Um, I don't take failure lightly, but I feel like I didn't fail. So after that, we ended up hopping back in my truck, and my mom and Josie drove me home. And as we were driving away, you saw more people like on the tailgate of their flatbed, and they were assessing their injuries too, whether they were going to DNF or not. Just a super challenging section. I think just either people rolled their ankles, knees, or like me, hyperextended a hamstring. But we got back home and we were up until probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, just talking about everything. And I was super interested to know what I was going to feel like the next day. Because in total, I finished out 55.1 miles. It's 55 miles. And my watch showed a little bit differently, but it was 55 miles to the course. Got up the very next morning and I didn't have much pain. I mean, I could barely walk up the stairs, but like it wasn't any pain. I felt super super good. One of what I believe and one of the reasons my recovery went so well from this race was because I practiced Bikram a lot. So that's something I'm going to continue to do, and I would encourage anyone who's a runner. You have to work in yoga, Bikram, something of that nature, stretching at least 1 to 2 days a week, especially for these long mile races. Out of that entire, I would say, since the race, the first 5 days after the race, I was walking immediately from day one, 10 to 15 miles just to get the lactic acid out and keep going. So I think right now I'm about 8 days past the race, if I'm not mistaken. The only pain I feel, I have a little pain in my toe and my left foot, and that's about it. So I'm going to take this recovery. I'm going to take recovery for about another 4 or 5 days. So about 2 weeks I'll take, and then we're going to get back at it. So yeah, after the race, we spent probably about 3 days in Mount Hood, and we all fell in love with it. I've decided I'm going to sign up for HoodHundred for 2026. I'd like to finish what I started, and I feel confident. I know I can do it. I signed up for 2 more ultras. I signed up for one in December 6th in San Diego, which is a 50 miler, and then the Black Cannon in Arizona for February 14th, which is a 100K, which is also a pre-qualifier for Western states. But we fell in love with Mount Hood. And so immediately we started hopping on Zillow and driving around and looking at local real estate, and we want to buy out there. So less thoughts is that Mount Hood is just a very, very magical, special place. I think we're going to make it into a yearly reunion. I'm definitely going back next year. And the coolest thing of all of this, I think my mom and Josie are going to run an ultra. My mom, for context, is 59 years old. She's never run a race in her life, and she's looking to run a 30K in Zion. And Josie's contemplating doing something big like this in life. So, all in all, a magical experience. I'm super grateful that we got to do this with my family, and yeah, looking forward to the next ultras, and I'm actually really excited for 2026 HoodHundred. So super super grateful.